600 kilometers inland from Macadam, in what was left of Montreal, Inspector Navid Spears parked his hopper outside the northeastern lift station. He cocked his head right back, looking way up as he got out of the car. For a few seconds he watched a metal shipping crate, shining in the sunlight, rising up the elevator through wispy clouds, beginning its long journey up to orbit, hopefully full of sterilized scrap alloys. It passed a crate that was coming down the other side, almost certainly full of nutritional powder. Scrap for food, the booming economy of post-Blight Earth. Jameson and Bill arrived behind him and got out. Then Rye. Spears walked up to the front gate and broadcast his badge and warrant while looking up at the cameras. Inspector Navid Spears of Reloc East. Requesting immediate access. Shut down the lift. An alarm wailed inside as the gates rolled slowly open. He waved to his team, and they all strode across the warehouse floor. Automated forklifts and conveyor belts screeched to a halt. Yasmin Carr, the station manager, marched toward them with a full head of steam. "You gotta be kidding me, Navid!" she shouted. "This is the third time this month!" "Good morning, Minnie," Spears said. "My apologies. You will be back up and running as quick as can be." "Bullshit! You talk to the minister when we don't make quota." He kept walking right past her. "I will leave that to you." The lift platform came into view, and he pointed up. "And I need you to bring that last one back down." "Ah, come on. Give me a break." "That last crate is still in my jurisdiction. I saw it on the way in. You can pop the closest counter crate off and let her drift down if you want." Minnie shook her head, looking vicious. "I'll have to check with Orbit. This is bad timing, Navid." "That's what I'm hoping." "Not that kind of bad timing. The boring kind. That just means more work for me." "You check all those crates?" "It's not my job to check those crates. It's my job to keep this lift running smoothly and get them up to orbit." Spears looked at the shipping schedule on his overlay, scrolling through for crate numbers. "Then you don't know what kind of bad timing it is, Minnie. I have reason to believe there are contraband materials in those scrap crates. Materials that are not allowed to leave Earth under IC and Alliance law. You want a quarantine breach on your hands?" Minnie was already marching back to her office. Spears turned to his team. "Bill, Rye, you're on the incoming. Jamie, we'll work the platform." Jamie looked eager. Possibly her first bust, and a big one at that. He could hear her breathing heavily as they walked up the platform ramp. "Jamie, you're stressing me out. Calm down." "Yes, sir." In all his years, he'd never met an analyst so eager to turn over every stone, scour every transport file, every checkpoint, every transcript. She was the one that had put him on to the possibility that someone was switching crates along the rail tubes. The computer hadn't even flagged it at all. Jameson, on a hunch, had picked up a pebble and scratched her initials onto a crate at the Penfield yard. A crate that was full of alloy and bound for the Dovanian system. Then, she had gone during her weekend down to Buffalo and found those initials down at the yard there, about 1,000 light-years away from where they were supposed to be. He didn't know how exactly the switches were being made, but if it wasn't an accident, it had to be highly organized and systemic. He accessed the crate door with his overlay and swept left. Access denied. He brought up his local comm and found Minnie at the top of the list. "Minnie, I need access." She didn't respond, probably raging in her office, but the crate door beeped and swung open. Jameson shone a light in. All scrap. Mostly carbon tubing and lattice work from high-rise rubble. He brought his comm back up. "Bill, what do you got?" 5 crates in, nothing yet. Just alloy, mostly carbon." "Tags all check out?" "Yeah, these are them. No sign of a swap." "Keep looking." He turned to Jameson as the incoming crate of nutritional powder finally hit the deck and the enormous clutch started to disengage underneath the platform. "We unlucky?" he asked her. She shook her head. "You think there was a tip-off?" She shrugged. "Do you?" Spears stepped back into the crate, shining a flashlight at the bent-up metal. "If there is, we need to be more careful. This could be deeper than we thought." The platform jolted underneath them, and the lift cables started coming through in reverse. It would be a few minutes at least before the skyward crate made it back down, but they both knew it wouldn't have anything in it but scrap. Not if the others were all clean. Somebody had tipped them off. And there was a very short list of somebodies that could be. Right on cue, a photo of his boss's grinning face flashed up on his overlay. Major Trevor Halstad, Director of Quarantine Enforcement. Spears turned away from Jameson and swept up. The picture more or less came to life. A little less hair in the front, a little more chub in the cheeks, but the same big goofy grin. His voice boomed. "Nav, what are you finding?" "Nothing yet." Spears watched his eyes carefully. Trevor furrowed his brow and shook his head. "Damn. Though I guess that's a good thing, looking at the big picture." "Nah, I don't think so, Trevor. These switches are happening, I'm sure of that. And we have reason to think they've been happening for a long time." "How long?" He glanced at Jameson. She was facing away, acting like she wasn't trying to listen in. "Years, Trevor. Jameson's been looking through the transport archives of the last 5 years. Far too many intersect delays. It's as though they're deliberately scheduling trains so they have to stop for each other." Trevor rolled his eyes. "You said it yourself, Nav. You look hard enough, you start seeing things that ain't there. I don't know Jameson, but she sounds like the type to me." Spears nodded, not wanting to explain the statistical likelihood that Jameson was right. "Sure." Trevor laughed. "What would they even be switching with? For 5 years. Rubble and scrap is all Earth has to offer. All anybody wants from us." "Could be antiques," Spears said. "Art. Heirlooms of evacuees. People that didn't get to pack all their keepsakes during the Exodus." "Oh no," Trevor said in mockery, holding up both hands. "Keepsakes! Call the interstellar press!" He laughed, then held up his palm. "Look, I'm not saying it's not good work, but I just got a call from the transport minister saying if this raid doesn't produce, it's coming out of our funding." "She can do that? With a potential quarantine breach?" "Not a quarantine breach, Nav. All those crates are being baked up in orbit. And yeah, she can do whatever the fuck she wants. That alloy you're looking at pays half the government budget, maybe more. You see what I'm saying?" "Well, if they're switching it with something of a different density, it might not be sufficiently baked. The Blight could survive if they get the settings wrong. Who's gonna know?" "Come on, Nav. The IC makes damn sure it's all nuked to shit, I promise you. Listen, I don't know what kind of theories you got flying around, but I'm gonna need you to lay off the lifts for a while. At least until the minister pulls her fist out of my ass." He made a strained face, like it was actually up there. "Please, Nav." Spears smiled. "Okay, Trevor. Understood. And good luck with that." Just needs a little lube like everything else. And hey," he pointed a thick finger at the camera, "keep up the good work. Overall, we both know you make me look good. Always have." "Yep." "Oh, and give Minnie a wink from me. I bet she was happy to see you." "Oh, yeah." He swept away the call and turned back to Jameson. She was on her overlay, fingers flipping back and forth, scrolling through files. "That's that," he said. "We're backing off from the lifts for a while." "I don't think we should do that, sir." "Me neither. And I'm not saying we drop the investigation, but between you and me, we need to be more careful from now on. Find something else to talk about while we keep our eyes open. You know what I mean?" "Yes, sir. Actually, I have just the thing." Spears laughed and shook his head. "Of course you do. Shoot." Up above them, the crate had come back into view below the lowest ratchet, still a couple 100 meters high. "I've been looking through some of the Eastern surveillance transcripts," she said. "Not much yet, but could be developing." She shared her screen with him. "It came in earlier this week from an audio surveillance in an estate out east. You know the name Maxwell Lee?" Spears mouthed the name a couple times. "He's Spectre Lee's grandson. Poor bastard stuck here because he was in jail during the Exodus. Been trying to break quarantine for years." She nodded. "Okay. What's he up to?" "So, the local police have earworms inside the heating ducts in his house, including his dining room, where this was recorded. The computer flagged it 2 days ago. I was sifting through false positives, but I thought it looked interesting enough." That didn't sound promising. False positives were usually labeled as such for a reason, and interesting enough was a highly relative term. Nonetheless, he swept up the recording on his overlay. March 24th, 12:34 p.m., Lee Estate, dining room. He pressed play and immediately heard two voices. "So what do they have, contacts in Buffalo?" "No, I can't talk about it. Especially not here. Listen, it's better if you don't know. It's for your own safety, right?" "Well, at least give me something. Assuming I'm invited." "Of course you are, but I can't say yet. Sorry, man. We'll know more later, sometime this week." "Sounds kind of bogus, or a trap. You got Ted on it?"
"Oh yeah, all over it. He thinks they're for real. Ted's actually on board so far."
Spears listened to it twice.
"Lee is the one dodging all the questions?"
Jameson nodded.
"So what? You think he's talking about the lift in Buffalo?"
Jameson shrugged.
"What else is in Buffalo?"
He smiled.
"Sure, but he answers no, anyway."
"Yeah, but why would this guy be asking about contacts in Buffalo unless they're talking about relocation?"
"Maybe. Who's the guy asking the questions?"
"I spoke with St. John. They think it's Lee's best friend, Chip Tasker." "Assuming he's invited? That sounds like relocation as well. But what I'm most interested in is when he says they'll know more later in the week. Seems like a meeting."
He furrowed his brow. "St. John agree with you?"
"Not exactly."
He laughed. "Of course they didn't. We got any eyes on Lee?"
"Yeah, the city surveillance has him on file, but we don't have anything around the estate, other than the ears inside. It's pretty far out in the country. We planted cameras a few years ago, but his security guy sniffed them all out. That's the Ted he's talking about. The one who's on board. A travel metaphor, by the way. Might have had transport ships on his mind."
Spears raised an eyebrow, and she continued.
"We could order some eyes on the estate for a few days. See who he's meeting with."
Spears shook his head and laughed. "Not based on this, Jamie. He could be talking about anything. Drugs, food, weapons, equipment, hookers, take your pick. This guy's probably got his finger in every pie. Didn't they bust his family for sending him gift parachutes down from orbit?"
"Yeah, a few years ago. Charge didn't stick. And it turned out to be supplies and birthday gifts. Nothing major. At least, what was confiscated."
"Right." Spears frowned. "Nobody ever dropped me a birthday gift from space." She smiled. "The point is," he continued, "travel metaphors and a reference to Buffalo don't make this Reloc jurisdiction. It's a police case. If that."
Jameson shrugged. "Okay." He leaned back on the platform railing, his stomach grumbling. It always did, almost non-stop during ration week. He didn't have a decent meal on the menu for another couple days. Bill's voice came through his earpiece.
"That's all of 'em, boss. Numbers check out, and they're all full of scrap."
"Yep." The crate on the lift finally settled to the ground. Minnie popped it open without being asked. The barcode matched. It was full of alloy, just like all the rest. Jameson finished looking through it while Spears stood on the ramp, shaking his head in frustration.
"They knew," he said. "Somehow they knew."
Jameson nodded. What's the next move?
I don't know.
He looked up the elevator, all the way up through the clouds.
You know what, Jamie? If you want to follow up on this Maxwell Lee and whoever he's meeting with, be my guest. Might as well stay busy.
Yes, sir. She beamed like she'd won a prize. He shook his head at her and started walking back to the hoppers, stomach still grumbling.